everyone. It is time for another episode of Weather University. I am your host, Storm Tracker 8 meteorologist Matt DiNardo, but I never do this by myself because I always have my partner in crime, Jacqueline Waters, with me. Good morning, Jacqueline.
Good morning, Matt. How are you?
Good. So once again, you have outdone yourself with another continuation in our severe weather kind of outlook here. I guess outlook was a series. Yeah, thank you. And today, what are our topics that we're talking about?
Today, so last week we talked about tornadoes, wind shear, and the first week we talked about basically the basics of thunderstorms. This week, well, I think it's the end of it. We'll finish it off. Hail and lightning, which also, I mean, we'll talk about it, but hail also, it's one of the categories in a thunderstorm that could make it severe.
Correct.
So, and lightning, obviously, we get a lot of lightning in Virginia. We don't get too many tornadoes, which is great, but lightning we see quite a lot.
Lightning we do, and we're also going to touch on a couple of different parts of thunderstorms as well. So we have a lot going on. Mm-hmm. So without delay, let's talk about the formation of hail. I always wanted to do that on there.
We need one of those buttons.
We do. You know, there are sound effects somewhere. We should anyway.
I think it would be bad if we learn those. We're going to just be pushing them all the time.
They'll be running in stop, the guys. All right. So in all thunderstorms, Jacqueline, we talked about this last week with the formation of tornadoes. We have winds that go up and winds that go down, updrafts and downdrafts. And that helps to support the life of a thunderstorm, but also can give way to these many different things, hail being one of them.
Yes. And without an updraft, we can't have hail.
Right.
And also without an updraft and downdraft, we talked about this in the first episode, that thunderstorm really just becomes not organized. It just falls apart. So the updraft is very important for hail formation. And you have that rising air. That's what an updraft is, basically. And once that air rises, it cools, and the raindrops are carried further up into the cloud, and they basically mix with what we call super cooled water droplets. Right. And then basically when they get too heavy, they fall from the downdraft. It's pretty simple when you think of it. Obviously, there's a lot of physics that goes into it. But yeah, hail is...
And the way that the hail gets bigger is because once we get it into that super cooled water, it freezes. It then falls back down, collects more raindrops on it, gets pushed back up by the updraft, freezes again, and it continues this cyclical process until it's too heavy, and then finally the updrafts can no longer support it, and now these hailstones begin to fall down, and this is when we get hail on the ground. And
I guess it's important, I forgot to mention how it gets bigger, but the quicker it falls, basically when that updraft weakens, the smaller it is. So when it keeps colliding with other water droplets, you get this bigger hail, and when you have a really strong updraft, it doesn't come down until that updraft weakens, and that's when you get the really big hail.
Right, and that's where you find hail, like we always talk about out in the Ohio Valley, the Midwest, and then, of course, Texas, Oklahoma, where we sometimes talk about golf ball, baseball, tennis ball size hail, sometimes, softball. Around here, though, we're really in the low end. You know, on a really good storm, we might see quarter size to 1 inch. Every once in a while, I've been here 21 years. I think we've had 2 instances of ping pong ball to golf ball size, which is pretty large for sure, but nowhere near, and it does a lot of damage. Right?
Yeah, I was going to ask, what was the biggest hail you've seen?
That I can remember, golf ball, at least in the past 2 decades. Yeah.
When I haven't really ever seen like big hail here since I've been here.
Right.
But in Oklahoma, when I spent 2 summers out there, they have massive hail.
Right.
Like and you just hear it. And
you got to run inside.
Yeah. And I think about like all the car dealerships. Like, I don't know how, I guess they're just used to it.
Which is a shame, but I mean, it destroys the heck out of the car, the hoods, the fenders, it shatters the glass, etc. Typically what I've seen here, I've reported on, right? But what I physically have seen, I've never seen really anything bigger than nickel size.
Yeah.
That's just a generic thunderstorm that produces that.
Yeah, so, and then if it's bigger than that quarter, that's what classifies it as a severe storm.
Correct, exactly, 1 inch in diameter. Then there's the largest hailstone ever recorded in the United States, which happened just 2010, so about
2011.
2011? Okay.
Yes,
okay.
I believe so.
2010,
you're right, 2010, sorry.
15 years ago, roughly, 8 inches in diameter, almost 18 and a half inch circumference. So diameter, so you cut across, circumference is the wrap around. weighing nearly 2 pounds.
That's insane.
Ginormous. Yeah.
I
Really
mean, just
is.
being, I mean, it's also falling out of the sky.
Mhm.
Like, just imagine being hit with a 2-pound rock like,
Right,
from
exactly
the
what it
sky.
is. Yeah, no, for sure. And that's why
Nuts.
when you get crazy large hail, we
Yeah.
want people to be inside. So that's it's pretty wild. Okay, so this is kind of takes us a little bit of thunderstorm setup here, and then strong winds in thunderstorms. In thunderstorms, there's something we call a downburst. Jacqueline, you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, so it kind of has to do with the downdraft. I mean, we have the updraft, we have that downdraft, and we have heavy rain up top, we have the hail up top, and when basically that downdraft just becomes strong and it just comes down like buckets, it basically spreads out the wind in all directions. So it could produce really strong winds. We have a microburst, macroburst, but basically that wind is spread out in all directions from that downdraft, and a lot of times sometimes that wind could be as strong as a weak tornado.
Correct.
Which we talk about a lot
Which
too.
we do talk about a lot. So, when I go into schools, we talk about this. We talk about, downbursts, microbursts, and, I always, and you see when we show this video here, you see the plume of the air coming down, and then it hits the ground and it goes outward. And I always say to kids, I say, look, never go home and do this, wink, wink, to show your parents, what a microburst is. And of course, I get emails, I'm sure, saying, you just ruined mine. Anyway, if you were to take an egg and you were to throw it really hard at the ground, it can't go through the ground. It spreads outward.
That's a good way to look at it.
The reason why you use an egg is because the yolk and stuff will fly outward. It's showing you like how the winds would fly outward. So, it's extremely messy, and it's not a good thing to do in your kitchen.
Nope.
But it's
and you waste an egg.
Cool science experiment.
Eggs are expensive these days too.
They are for sure. So we have so the downburst is the general name, and then we have two subsets of that. A microburst, which is a smaller downburst, less than 2.5 miles. So these are really intense winds in a short area. We have seen this here numerous times. Yeah.
And then we have the macroburst, which is larger than 2.5 miles.
Right.
Which we also see here.
We do. So these are all what we call straight line winds. It comes down and spreads things out. So the cool thing, when you talk about tornadoes, and we talked about this last time, when we look at, how the destruction of a tornado, we see a circular path, things that are laying over each other, right? This looks almost like that, except everything is blown out from the center point. So if you were to fly, let's say, a drone over, you would see like an absolute center point, and everything kind of blown outward in a direction versus a circular path, which is tornadic. So that's how we could tell immediately from destruction. That's when we say the National Weather Service is going to go out and investigate the damage that was done. That's the first thing they're looking for. What does the damage look like from above? And that tells them right away, okay, this is possibly tornadic, or this is not tornadic.
And I mean, you said it could cause just as much damage. So, sometimes it's hard to tell until they go out and survey it.
Exactly right. All right, so lightning. This is, back in the day, this used to be the #1 killer in thunderstorms, and now flooding has taken that over, I believe, but they run neck and neck with each other.
Yeah.
You still have to be safe. So let's talk about how lightning develops, Jacqueline.
Yeah, so, also flooding, I think it just, because I was looking into this the other day, flooding encompasses more of the country. I think that's why, more of the world. I mean,
more of the world.
And we just see it more often than, well, I guess we see lightning a lot too. But if you look into it, it's actually pretty interesting, I think. But lightning is a little bit complex to explain.
That's
it has
why
a lot to do
off to Jacqueline.
Yeah. Thank you, Maddie D. It has a lot to do with chemistry and all about electrical charges. If you remember back in maybe Chem 101. But of course, we start with warm air rising. That's what starts a storm. If you remember back to our first episode in the series. And then you have ice particles and water droplets colliding in a cloud. And that's what gives you those charges, both positive and negative. And basically the updraft and the downdraft of the storm separate them. And basically when those charges interact, that's when you get lightning. So you could have intercloud lightning, you could have cloud to ground lightning, or even cloud to another cloud lightning, and you have both positive and negative charges. So a lot, and also different charges. You have the step ladder.
Great job explaining that.
Are you serious?
Yeah, no, for sure, because it is really difficult you did a nice job talking about the separation of charges and the fact that the particles in the cloud collide and create the separation of charges and create the charges in general. And so what lightning does is it puts things back together.
Yes.
Yeah, which is, because in our world, everything, there's positive and negative charges on this microphone. There's positive and negative charges on this keyboard. Everything has positive and negative. It's just the way that it's built. You plug something into a plug to get power. That's positive and negative charges. So yeah.
And sometimes you get shocked when you hit certain things. That's
there you go.
Lightning, kind of. It's electricity.
So, and that's the thing that when I go to schools, I talk about, have you ever pulled apart socks? Or have you touched your friend? And then I of course say, hey, next time you go to the library, don't do this, wink, wink. And that is drag your feet, if you have rubber sole shoes, on a carpet, and then go over and touch your friend, because you're going to give them a shock. That static charge is like a mini lightning stroke.
I've been electrocuted also.
Oh.
There was like a short in the microwave at a condo I was staying in Hawaii, and my hip was on the oven handle, and I was opening the microwave, and I fell to the ground. My friends thought I was joking, but we had to call maintenance, and they also did it themselves, and then they fell to the ground. They believed me. We had to call maintenance, and it was some sort of like short.
And it wasn't grounded. That's the problem. The
which was first time I've ever done that. Hopefully the last too.
Yeah, hopefully so.
It hurts.
Just continuing on here. So a positive strike is positive down to the negative, opposite way for the negative strike.
And positive is much less frequent.
Yes.
But also more dangerous because you have that further distance.
Correct. Lightning safety. When thunder roars, go indoors. That's the simple one to remember. Lightning can strike miles away from a storm. We call that a clear air discharge. It might be bright and sunny over you, and then their thunderstorm might be 25, 30 miles away, and it could still send a lightning bolt to your location. So pretty wild stuff there. And
it could travel far.
Okay.
And I put this together. When I go to schools, I like to.
Ladies and gentlemen, she put the whole thing together. Okay.
Let's I always do though.
She really likes to have fun with the different graphics. Yes.
I do. Yeah. I love graphics. But basically, and a lot of things you might see online, especially now with social media, a lot of it's fake. A lot of things. I mean, you can count like the cricket chirps, like some of the stuff you hear are true. And this is one of them. So you could basically just count the seconds between when you see the lightning and then when you hear the sound of thunder, and you divide it by 5. So if you count 5 divided by 5, you're 1 mile away from the lightning. And that gives you your distance in miles. So if you count 15 before you hear the thunder, divided by 5, you get 3 miles away from the lightning. And then obviously the quicker you hear it, the closer it's getting. Yep. And anytime you hear lightning, I mean, we just heard the saying, when thunder roars, go indoors, because lightning could it could strike 10 miles away, I believe. Correct. Up to 10 miles. So
let's talk about this.
You look excited.
No. So I get asked this question a lot, and perhaps you do, Jacqueline. Is there such a thing as heat lightning?
Oh, yeah.
And the answer is no, there is not. So the sound of thunder cannot travel more than 16 miles in a perfect situation. So what happens is you might be sitting at your house in Midlothian, and there might be you might be looking to the north, depending on how your porch or whatever is laid out. And you might see lightning from a thunderstorm, and you don't know the thunderstorm is there. It could be in Ashland, 20 plus miles away. But because you don't, and your sky is lighting up overhead, but because the sound of thunder doesn't happen, that would be what you call heat lightning. But really, somebody is getting a thunderstorm. So yeah, there is no true thing as heat lightning.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a thunderstorm somewhere.
My favorite is like on the beach, because obviously you don't have any buildings when you're looking out on the ocean, and you could see, I just love watching thunderstorms from the beach. But if it's close, you don't want to be on the beach.
Right.
But,
we're going to go to that in a second.
Yeah, you could, especially not near the water, which we'll talk about. But I mean, it's just so nice. I love lightning storms, thunderstorms, I guess.
They are very, very, very cool. So old school people like me, Jackie and I had a little argument about this before we came on. But this was, so Jacqueline, has this kind of recipe for the sound of thunder, or how far a lightning storm is, a thunderstorm is. I learned, again, old school, you count slow Mississippi. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, and that gives you an approximation.
Mm-hmm.
This is a little bit more exact here. You're divided by 5 and whatever. But really, when I'm sitting back watching a thunderstorm, the last thing I want to do is math. So I count.
It's
slower.
easy though. Divide by 5.
It is easy. I know. I'm just saying. But
Yeah.
so you might have heard that way as well. And again, the real thing is, if you have a child or a family member who is scared of thunderstorms, and my daughter Alexandra was terrified of thunderstorms, we worked on the fact that, is your number getting smaller or is it getting bigger? If it's getting bigger, it's moving away, and therefore you're safe. And again, we also talked about being inside, being safe. Let's talk about lightning safety here before we get to that lightning fatalities, actually.
Yeah. One thing that I first noticed when I pulled up this graphic, notice how, I mean, not every year, but notice how the fatalities are decreasing as we head towards, I mean, more recent years. 2021 on there looks like the smallest number. Right. And maybe, I mean, I was just thinking off the top of my head, maybe that has to do with quarantine. Maybe a lot more people were inside. I don't know.
It could be. Yeah. That's a possibility.
But last year we had 12 fatalities, none in Virginia. Most, I didn't believe the most were in Florida. I think 5 were in Florida,
which is the lightning capital of the world.
Yeah. So I was doing some research on this also. So first I pulled up a list from the National Weather Service and I was looking at where we rank and what state ranks the top for lightning fatalities. And at first it said Florida, and then number 2 coming in at Texas, but that doesn't take into account the population.
Okay.
So when you take out the population, number 1 on the list, it's actually Wyoming.
For fatalities?
Yes.
Interesting.
And that just basically, I mean, because Texas makes sense. It's the biggest state.
The largest, right.
Well, I guess, is Alaska larger?
Alaska is larger, but I mean,
yeah, with severe weather. Yeah. So is it taking out population or taking into account population?
If you take into account population, that means you're kind of making it as an equal playing field. You're probably doing some math. There's my guess. I'll listen to what you're saying.
I don't know the exact term, but it's basically so as an equal playing field.
Okay.
I don't know if it's taking
so then you're taking out population.
Okay, that's what I thought. Taking out population. We rank number 37.
Okay.
Which is not bad.
And probably is it all 50 states or is it the 48 contiguous states?
So it even includes Alaska and Hawaii, but so Alaska and Hawaii ranks at the last.
Yeah.
Yes, which makes sense. But Wyoming, New Mexico, and Arkansas are the top 3.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
So.
All right. So lightning fatalities going down. Lightning safety. This is kind of important because you want to be protecting yourself from any thunderstorm. It's simple is just be inside.
Yes. Sometimes being inside also you have to be careful of. So electrical currents travel through water and metal easier. I can't English today. Easier.
I can't English today. And that says it all, ladies and gentlemen.
It's a Monday. Easier.
Yep.
And garages, some old garages, right, where they have metal in the ground.
Right. So when you if you have a concrete slab, which most garages do, you have rods in the ground and they stick into the ground. That's how you pour the concrete to create the structural soundness, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, long story short, it will create a charge that will go through the ground. So, okay, number 1, yes, be inside, but don't be in a shower.
Yes.
Because if a lightning bolt strikes nearby, there is a chance that it could electrocute the water that travels through the pipes through your house, and you can get a shock that way. Especially was the case in older homes that had copper piping versus now the PVC piping, the plastic piping. But still something to keep in mind.
Don't be on the phone if it's like a...
If it's a corded phone.
I couldn't even think of the word.
Yes. And which, again, very few people have now. Most people have these as their phone. And so you're fine to be on the phone, except if the power goes out, you might lose, depending on what you're running there. But yeah, it used to be don't play video games because video games all had controllers that had a wire to the console. Now all of those are wireless as well. And we still tell you don't be careful with your electronics because some of them are still plugged in, and there's a chance if the house were to get hit, if it's not grounded correctly, and most homes are, they can't handle the power going through. It could surge, and that could be an issue too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, one of the worst places to be is in the water. So also this last year, 12 fatalities, 2 were at the beach. So
Okay.
you don't want to be at the beach when a thunderstorm moves
No
through.
pools, no water. That's why you have the 45-minute out time from the last time they hear thunder. So if at 2 o'clock in the afternoon you're at the pool, 2:05 thunder happens, you get out and you're sitting for 10, 15 minutes and thunder happens again at 2:20, the clock restarts.
Yep.
Yeah. So
And then there was one person, unfortunately, fishing. And then 2 were under a tree and they unfortunately lost their life.
So, okay, let's talk about that.
I think that's the next frame.
Here, right, which is right here,
That's
where we don't want to be in an open field. We don't want to make ourselves the tallest object in that field, and we don't want to stand underneath the tallest object in that field.
no, because if it strikes that tallest object,
You're going to be somehow get some discharge from that.
and also not only just discharge, but also the tree could fall on you. But there's a lot of different ways you could get struck by lightning. You have a lot of different, and maybe this is an episode for another day, but there's a lot of different lightning strikes, step ladder, stroke, all those things. That's
So,
like a whole nother episode.
Okay, so you mentioned something there. How lightning is formed. If we went back to that, we talked about the separation of the charges. So the way lightning is formed, you have an initial stroke which comes out of the cloud toward the ground. Then from the ground up, you have a return stroke. And in between, you have between 5 to 7 what are called step leaders that connect it. And that all happens in a microsecond. And when those step leaders connect, that's what creates the flash that your eye registers, which is why lightning flashes. So, yeah. But then we have other types of lightning as well.
Yes.
The
Rope
fireball
lightning.
Yeah,
Rope lightning.
Yeah, there's all kinds. So we'll leave that for another day.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the overall thing there. Moving on, because we have things to do. We have no lightning in the forecast today, thankfully. But we do have rain. Now, there might be a thunderstorm. And I think earlier this morning, there were some thunderstorms around. But this is going to be, for the most part, a chilly rain for Richmond north, south toward the Virginia state line, and maybe out to Norfolk. You might have that rumble of thunder for the afternoon.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I know we've all been suffering from the allergies. So the rain, I think we're all happy about it today. It's going to wash out that pollen for today. Also, it's going to help with the wildfire season, and I'm happy about the rain.
Yeah, it's kind of been a long time since we had a good rainy day. We have another system coming in later Thursday, a couple of showers that lingers into Friday as a system develops to bring us more rain. And there's a chance that could cut off, meaning kind of disassociate itself from the main flow of moving weather patterns. And if that happens, we get more showers throughout the day on Saturday. Sometimes we get those cutoff patterns that just stick for days and days. And it doesn't pour the entire time, but it doesn't really give us great weather. It's really unsettled. That happens a lot in April, and there is some concern that might happen a bit with this one. We'll see if it becomes progressive on Sunday and pushes out. So, yeah, something to watch.
Yeah. In the meantime, hopefully everyone enjoyed the 80s.
Yeah.
Because we're in the 50s now. And
I know some people were like, "Oh, it's too hot, too quick." You know,
I did have to. Did you turn your AC on this weekend?
So I have one of those, kind of
Smart
thermostats, smart thermostats, right? And so it figures out what's going on and it adjusts for me. Yeah. So
I turned mine on. I was way too hot.
It got hot quick for
Yeah.
sure, right? And it's not like you could open your windows up because it was still hot outside. But secondly,
And it was muggy.
There was enough breeze too that all the pollen's going to come flying in. So,
Yep.
Yeah, a lot going on. All right, Jacqueline, any final thoughts, any words of wisdom?
No, I mean, all this lightning safety, keep in mind, we're in severe weather season. So we want to keep that number. I mean, hopefully that number one day becomes 0 across the country for 0 lightning fatalities, but let's keep Virginia's fatalities at 0 at least. And we'll keep you safe.
That's right.
And if you have any topic ideas for us to do on Weather University, feel free to let us know.
We should probably get into a little bit of tropical since the Colorado State University last week did release their forecast, which if off the top of my head, don't quote me, 17 storms, 9 hurricanes,
17.
4 major. So that's the first one in mid-May. NOAA will release theirs. But we'll go through tropical maybe next week.
Yeah.
June 1st is around the corner for our tropical
It really
forecast.
is. I was going to pull it up, but
yeah, I think I got it.
So 17 named, 9 hurricanes,
9,
4. Yeah,
Yep.
you got it right.
Yep. There you go. All right, everybody. Jacqueline Waters.
Matt
great seeing
DiNardo.
you. We'll talk to y'all soon.